Begin. Hi, Tara. How are you?
Hi, Miss. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry, my laptop was updating,
It's all right, Miss.
so it took me a while. Okay, so let's continue with this question so that we can conclude it properly.
All right, Miss.
Do you remember the question? Do you have the extract?
Yes, Miss. Miss, I wrote an answer for that. For school actually for that question.
Sure. Send me what you have from school.
Miss, do I send it on WhatsApp?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right, Miss.
I'm just going to get my phone. Just give me a second.
All right, Miss. I've sent
Okay, I've received your work. Explore the significance of the aspects of dramatic tragedy in the following passage. In relation to Act 1 and 2, you should consider the following in your answer. Speaking Lear, just was performed in 1606. Okay, let me just copy this onto the screen.
all right.
Just give me a moment. Okay, what do you need me to do for you with this one? Do you want me to help you review it, make corrections?
Yes, Miss.
Okay. Just let me copy it on the screen and then we can start with the edits. Can you see my screen?
Sorry, miss.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, miss, I can see that.
I'm setting action aspects of dramatic tragedy. Okay. Shakespeare's King Lear. So let me just read through what you have sent me.
Sure, miss.
Did your teacher check this already, or am I the first one to review this for you?
Miss, you're the first one to review.
Okay. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to know if we had any key points that you wanted to address. Okay, just give me about 2 minutes and I'm going to read through it and make corrections on the way, and then I'll talk you through what needs to be done.
Okay, miss.
Okay, Shakespeare's King Lear, just as poem 66 dramatic tragedy featuring the demise of the titular King Lear. His fall from grace is depicted through dramatic methods in which a few family ties and connections have formed this tragedy largely through the narrow looking in Cordelia. Okay, this extract highlights Leo's defiance and stubbornness latches onto the authority is left. Leo undergone a significant change in his stature and position of power, which he stopped adjusting to after years of adjusting, is now believed to be an instrument of God with absolute rights. In Jacobean society, Leo does not understand the concept of simple living. All right, more of the ingratitude and betrayal of King Lear's daughter is highlighted. I think here for your second paragraph where it says that the old man, which is a rather derogatory address, especially to one's king, and a previous king is something that we can highlight as well.
All right, miss. And miss, I wanted to ask you about the length of the essay because I tried to use all the points we discussed in class.
You're asking me the length, about the length?
Yes, miss. I tried to include all the points we discussed in class, but
Do you feel that it's
only
short, or do you feel it's long? What are your feelings about the length, or what are your concerns?
I don't feel like it's
You don't feel it's enough?
yes, miss.
Okay, no problem. Let's take a look and then I'll break down the marking scheme and how we can assess what's enough and what's not, okay? Just give me
Okay.
1 moment. Okay, I really like your points and the explanations, the analysis that you have on them. I think they're really well put together. I think they're really well written. The only thing that I would change or suggest for you to change is your conclusion. Maybe make the conclusion a
Yeah.
little bit more definitive towards what you've written above. So because your conclusion is usually a summary of points.
Mm-hmm.
So your conclusion over here seems a little bit general. It's not bad. I just want you to add one more sentence or two more
Mm-hmm.
sentences at the end that will summarize the points above. Like, how does that dramatic? Because again, it's about King Lear, right? The question is about
Mm-hmm.
King Lear himself as well, and majority of the points are around him. So in your summary, I want you to tell us how these dramatized set of events with these dramatic methods have presented Lear and his daughters. So use the character traits and say that these dramatic methods highlighted Lear in this light and highlighted his daughters in this manner, or emphasized this about the daughter and about King Lear, because those are the characters that you've spoken about above. You want your conclusion to address that to some point.
All right, Miss.
So that's my feedback on that. I think the rest of the points are
Miss,
really nice. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
is the depth of analysis in like the paragraphs okay?
Yes. Now coming to that and coming to your question about length. Remember that this is a 25-mark question. So we're not looking for
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 pages of response. And even if your question was 40 marks, those marks are allocated as per the information discussed and not as per the length. You can talk for 5 pages or 6 pages, but if
Right.
what you've said is not relevant, if what you've said is not vital, it's not important, it's not analyzed correctly, it would defeat the purpose. So no examiner is going to look at the length of your work and score you. It's always going to be on, as you said, the depth
Right.
of your analysis or the relevance of your analysis or your perspective and understanding of the text. So let me share, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I shared that with you in the last class. Let me see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a marking criteria for you so that you can understand what we're looking for
Mm-hmm.
in this, so that you'll see exactly
This
where the
based
scoring
on
is
the
going.
mark scheme, how okay.
Yeah, so there is never a technical marking scheme for literature. The marking criteria is
Mm-hmm.
always showing you whether you have AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4, these different targets. AO1, for example, would focus on the grammar. AO2 would focus on understanding of the concept. AO4 would then, talk about connection to the question. Those are the marking criteria that we look at. There is no specific marking scheme, and there is no specific set of points that you must discuss or you should have discussed or you would likely discuss, because everyone's perspective to set play, to set text is different. You might have a different understanding of the dramatic methods. Your friend might have a different understanding of the dramatic methods. So you might discuss completely different points or completely opposite points to each other. It is your perspective and her perspective of how you change that said quotation, that said concept, and link it to the question. How do you build a connection between the question and your evidence? How are you able to analyze it? How are you able to connect it to everything that's going on? That's what matters. And that's where you score your marks. So there's no specific marking scheme for literature where it's going to tell you exactly the points you need to discuss. It mostly focuses on your conveying of points. So how well were you able to present your ideas? How was your vocabulary? How was your understanding? Because obviously, as you talk about things, the examiner will understand whether you know what you're saying or not. We'll be able to see if you're able to build a connection to the rest of the book or not. We will understand whether you have read the book or if you understand the book or not. All of those different things are taken into consideration, right? Your
Yeah,
understanding, your
right, Miss.
perspective, your reiteration of text, all of that. So there's no specific wrong or right answer to a literature question. I hope that clarifies a few things. Does that,
Yes.
yeah, does that help you clear up the concerns about the length?
Miss, which AO? Yes, Miss.
Let me get that marking
Um,
criteria for you.
Miss, which AO does I have trouble with AO2 in most of my answers.
Mm-hmm. We'll try and focus on that for your questions. So let me just, this is what the general AQA literature assessment objectives look like. So I'm just going to bring that to the screen. Here you go. All right, so AO1 is about reading and understanding the text. So every student or has this kind of style or perform a personal response format that you need to follow, which includes that peel format that we discussed. You need to have the point, the evidence, the explanation, the link. Everything has to have some kind of textual reference, some kind of proof, some kind of evidence that will support your point. And that's how the general structure of AO1 works like. And I think you have AO1 down to a T, so we're not struggling with that. Now, AO2, where you feel you're struggling, is analyzing the language, form and structure, used by a writer to create meanings and effects, and using relevant subject terminology where appropriate. Where do you feel like you struggle the most? Do you feel like you struggle with identification of these techniques and languages and forms and structures, or are you able to identify them but you're not able to explain them?
Miss, I think I can identify them to a certain level, but the thing is like explaining the effects and everything more in depth.
Hmm?
Um, yeah, it's like I don't explain the detail of the tutorial method like in more depth, I
Okay.
think.
Okay. Just gonna write those down. In-depth analysis. Great. What about AO3? Because AO3 is referring to the context in which they were written. For example, if we were talking about Shakespeare, we're talking about the era it was written in. Was it Jacobean era? Was it Elizabethan era? Was it the Edwardian era, right? All of those make a lot of difference to the contextualization. Do you feel that that is something you're comfortable with?
Miss, for us, AO3 is different. It's
Can you send me what
about
you have?
the sure, miss. Give me a minute. It's AO3 is the strength of the argument presented,
Mm-hmm.
the quality of the analytical paragraphs, the use of ambitious and precise vocabulary, as well as subject-related terminology.
Okay. Let me share another picture with you, I think. So do you only have AO1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah, yes, miss.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's the previous one that I shared with you the other day. Let me go back to that. So I think it's the one that we discussed the other day.
As for that answer, like which band would it roughly be in?
Yeah, let me pull that up again. This is the one you were referring to, right?
Yes, miss. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'll just copy it again here. So it's the one that we discussed the other day. Okay. Okay, please repeat your questions.
Miss, which band would that answer would like, which band would it be in roughly?
King Lear specifically?
Yes, miss.
I think
The
Yeah, I think in your text above you talked about it in being in the year 1606. So I think the 16th century.
No, Miss, I meant like which grade would it be in?
Your entire response, right?
Yes, Miss.
Yeah. So taking a look at everything that I've read and the edits that we can make on your conclusion, I guess we can say about maybe 21 out of 25.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can work a little bit better on the conclusion to make it maybe 23.
Yes, Miss. I did find it a bit too short and
Yeah, the
too.
key point about the conclusion is, or the trick to the conclusion is summary aspect of summarizing your points.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is that you've written, it's kind of like reiterating and repeating certain aspects of your response, right? So that's what you can focus on. It's just about summarizing. So you can make your response longer or your conclusion longer specifically by tackling those aspects, tackling that reiteration and summary method when it comes to your conclusion.
Miss, in an exemplar answer, I read the examiner's report and it's had something about bringing in extra points, like more points in the conclusion, and I think that got marks for it. Um,
Who are
I
you
just
talking
wanted to
about?
ask about that. Miss, it was an exemplar answer.
Okay. So what I usually tell my students about literature, the more points, the merrier. Okay.
Mhm.
And there's no, again, like I said, you're not getting marks on the length. So when I say the more points, the merrier, it's not again about the teacher looking at your page or your work and saying, okay, she's written 10 pages. Even if it's more, the merrier, those points need to be valuable. They need to be relevant enough so
Mhm.
that they are adding to your point. Because if you're going to write something just for the sake of writing it and it's not adding to your work, it's not adding to your explanation, it's not adding to your analysis, it's going to be a waste of time for you to even write it. And your examiner is going to skim right over it. So always, even when you're talking about additional points towards the conclusion as well, they have to be the relevant points. Which exemplar response are you referring to?
It wasn't on King Lear, it was on The Great Gatsby.
Do you
I
have
can
the
send it
file?
if you want.
Yeah. You can send the file and we can look at it and
Oh
dissect
yes,
it
Miss,
and
I
break
do.
it down. Yeah.
Sure, Miss. Yeah. Miss, I've sent it.
Great. Let me open it up. Okay. So are you looking at student A or student B or student C?
Miss, I think it was student A.
Okay. Overall, Fitzgerald cleverly chooses to name the setting where the main characters reside as eggs. He connects the physical features of the eggs and their metaphorical connotations with the communities within them. Ultimately, the eggs become a significant symbol in more than just a setting in the story, as they show the values of the people within them and implicitly reflect them mostly in the figurative aspect. Your question was, consider the significance of East Egg and West Egg as settings in the Great Gatsby. Okay. Now, what was your concern about this specific conclusion?
Miss, in the examiner's comments, it said the points, like the extra points the student brought in, like that scored.
Which AO are you referring to? AO1, 2?
I think that was A1.
Okay, let me just read it out to you. There is assurance in the understanding of social class in relation to setting, particularly in terms of wealth. Sharpness in the use of the lens of places evidence, consistently clear connections between aspects of 1920s culture as Fitzgerald portrays it and places the cultural genre made. Through the comments in the second paragraph would be more detailed in support of the fourth and fifth paragraph examples of how ideas are developed. I don't think that's the one. I focus on the author, so this is AO2. I focus on the authorial use of the eggs as maintained from the introductory paragraph. Fitzgerald's use of topographical features is subject to assured analysis, and for example, perceptive points are made. There's a term eggs. There is further evidence of ensured engagement. I don't think this is the commentary that you're referring to. It doesn't say anything about additional points. Can you cross-check?
I saw it.
Yeah, can you, maybe it's for another one?
Yes, it might be.
Yeah. Can you cross-check?
Yeah, that's probably the case. Oh yeah, it's not there.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're taking a look at these example responses because it's really good to help you structure it. And whatever your concerns are, we can tackle them. You can just find the comment for me and I'll help you address it.
Sure, Miss. I can't seem to find it. Maybe it was in another board or something. I was looking at the normal AQA answers too, but that's a bit different because it's
The
a different
8702
theme.
paper?
It's just AQA. Yeah, I think it's that one.
Yeah, I think it's the general
The
one is
theme is
8702. Yeah.
Yeah, the theme is love through the ages, but for Oxford, it's dramatic tragedy, like dramatic aspects of the theme was different, so it wasn't very.
Yeah, that's okay. But you can still look at the response just to see the structuring. That really helps with understanding length of paragraphs and whatnot. Like if you look at response 2, like if we're taking a general look at the responses, which response is longer, A or B?
It's
A.
A.
Yeah, A is almost 2 pages long,
Yeah,
and
just a little bit.
yeah, a little bit long. So B is just like 1.5, and A is like a full page. But again, look at the comments. So when we look at the examiner commentary for paper A, it's very precise, it's very specific, it's to the point. Okay. But when we look at the response or the examiner commentary of student B, we can see that there are quite a few errors, quite a few confusions, quite a few issues that can be corrected. So when we talk about length, or like when I was telling you the more the merrier, this is what I mean. That when you mess up somewhere, you might think that, okay, I've crossed off all the points that I need to talk about. I'll call it a day and I'll move on. You're giving yourself more room to mess up. Because what happens when you have a longer essay? If you're not able to explain something as well in the first paragraph or the second paragraph, it can be an idea that's kind of continued throughout the rest of it, and it's elaborated really nicely. If you look at the structuring of the paragraphs in both response A and response B has a lot of long paragraphs. But again, length is not our main priority. Longer paragraphs or longer essays do not generally translate to good essays or good paragraphs. So even though student B has very lengthy paragraphs, we can see that there are a lot of errors that he or she has made. And if you look at the paragraph length in student A's responses, there is a variation. There are middle-sized paragraphs, there are long descriptive paragraphs, and then there is 1 or 2 short paragraphs. This student has really nicely balanced out the structure and has given importance to points that needed it and has given just generalized analysis to points that didn't need it. Some of your points in your response will always be supporting points. those will always be the shorter paragraphs that kind of add context to the rest of your response. They add context to the rest of your paragraphs. They're always going to be there supporting your references. And those paragraphs are as important as your main paragraphs because they give a good contextualization to your response. So when you said you're struggling with AO3, sorry, you said AO2 is where you're struggling with, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Your close attention to authorial methods and in which meanings are shaped in literary text. So this is just about perspective and understanding of text. You need to be 100% comfortable with your text that you've read. You need to be well versed with it completely in order for you to be able to hit AO2 to the way that it's supposed to be hit. Hi, Tara, can you hear me?
Yes, Miss, I can.
So sorry, that was my internet. It got cut off.
That's all right, Miss.
Okay. So we're talking about having a good understanding of your text, knowing the book back and forth, and that's what's going to help you with relaying what it means. And also having the understanding that nothing generally means how it's written. Every literary text always has some kind of underlying meaning. That's why it says analyze ways in which meanings are shaped in literary text. And this comes into consideration with the dramatic methods as well. Dramatic methods is one of those techniques or one of those ways in which meanings are shaped in these literary texts. Things are very different. When you're doing a language paper, things are very straightforward. Things are very simple. What is written is what it means. But with literature, there's always an underlying or hidden meaning to any kind of text, prose, poetry, drama that you're doing. There's always going to be some kind of importance to the authorial methods. There's going to be an importance to what and why something is used. There's always a deeper understanding or a deeper meaning to each one of those type of uses exactly why the writer did something and why he didn't do something.
All right.
That's what we're referring to. So it's about looking at things from different perspectives and understanding their use in the papers. Are you comfortable with AO3?
Miss, I still don't understand, like, part about the argument.
Or the one about your personal and argued responses?
Yes, Miss.
Okay, let's discuss that. So when you're writing your essay, right, when you're responding to this said question above, whose perspective are you writing from?
Um, the reader,
And in this case, who is the reader?
a student,
And who's the student?
me,
So whose response are you writing? Or whose perspective are you writing?
from my perspective.
Your perspective. So already, when you're doing an essay question, your argument or your representation of ideas above is going to be personalized. Okay? It's going to be from your perspective. Yes, majority of it is going to be a little bit general. You're going to be telling us the meaning of the text, but each one of your points or each one of your paragraphs or your response is going to consist of some kind of perspective or some kind of explanation of what you believe in and what
Right.
you feel about it. That's why most of these responses are called personal responses. Because they're always going to be from your perspective. You're always going to end up giving some kind of reasoning from what you have understood. Even though you're giving a reader's response, a reader's perspective, you do not know what any other reader is going through when they read this. You do not know what any other reader might have or might not have understood about said text. So in this context, the reader is you, and you're giving your personal and argued response to said literary text. You're presenting your information. So you can do that with your questions in a way that you can say that I think, or I felt that this is how it could have been, or this is what it was. You can use terminologies like that to represent your point of view.
All right. Yeah.
Let me see if I can get a more specific um, example to this particular aspect. So let me build some kind of bullet points for you. Personal and argued responses to literary text. I'm just going to write everything down and then I'll walk you through it.
All right, Miss. And Miss, do you have any poetry past papers on papers of
Um,
poetry?
I'll have to check my stack of papers. I'll have to go through them. I'll see what I have on my hard drive.
Yes, all right.
And I'll
Because
let
I
you know.
find poetry more challenging.
What anthology are
From
you
paper.
doing?
The
The
Seamus
Seamus Heaney one, yeah. Um, just write that down.
I find that Death of a Salesman, the harder components is the two papers.
Sorry, could you please repeat that?
I find poetry and Death of a Salesman the harder component of the
Okay.
two papers.
Okay, so we will focus on those then. I just wanted us to finish this King Lear question instead of leaving it halfway before we moved on to the next thing. So in our class tomorrow, we can move on to anthology, and then next class we can have Death of a Salesman.
All right.
Check my stock for papers. So even if I have past papers, what happens is that the anthologies vary. So if I don't get one that's specific to Seamus Heaney, then I'll just try and find other Seamus Heaney anthology questions, because generally the poetry questions, the structure of the questions remains the same. So I'll try and get the AQA ones first, but because the anthologies change, sometimes there's newer anthologies, sometimes the same anthologies are used. If I can't find one in AQA, I'll just get any Seamus and Heaney's questions based on his poems, and we can do those.
All right.
Mm. Okay, so I have put these down for you in bullet points. I want you to kind of go read through them and then I'll discuss them.
Right, miss. All right, miss.
And Tara, are you still with me?
Yes, miss. I
Yeah,
read it.
yeah. So when we're looking for your personal argued response to literary text, we're looking for your perspective, right? So what did you feel? What kind of emotions did you go through? Did you relate to the characters? What is your take and perspective on these? When you're identifying the significant themes, character settings, and literary devices used by the author, you don't have access to what the author was trying to say. It is your perspective of what the author was trying to say that comes into your personal and argued response. Whatever you've said above, that this is that King Lear felt disrespected, it's your perspective. That's your personal response. That's your personal take that this is how King Lear must have felt. Right? So when you're
Right.
taking things into consideration like themes, character settings, literary devices used by the author, anything that you analyze above in your essay is always going to be something that's personal to you. It's always going to be something that you have analyzed, you have understood, you have reflected, because you do not have access to anyone else's opinions or perspectives or what anyone else thinks at that time. Right? You might have had this discussion with your colleague or your classmate at some point, but you don't have the luxury for that discussion at the point in the paper or while you're doing the question. So it's always going to be your personal response to said text and how everything is happening. When we're talking about using appropriate concepts and terminology, it's referring to those techniques like metaphors, symbolism, imagery, motifs, all of these different terms, these specific terminologies that have been used, are you understanding them? Have you used them? Or have you just addressed in the question, the writer said this, the author said this, instead of saying that the writer uses a metaphor, or this was a motif, this was a symbol, uh, this was vivid imagery. When you use those specific words, those appropriate concepts and terminology, it helps us understand that you have a good grasp on those concepts as well. And then that helps you kind of tie in to the other AOs as well. Because if you know that this is a metaphor, you can answer AO1. You can understand the significance of that metaphor. You can understand the meaning of that metaphor because you're able to identify that it's a metaphor. But if you're not able to identify the metaphor at all, then you're going to be failing the rest of the AOs as well because you're not going to be able to address the question in the way that it's supposed to be addressed because you're not um, clear with the concept of the ideas yourself.
Right.
So we also look at author's purpose, themes, and underlying messages. What was the author trying to say? What did you understand? And so forth. All of that comes into consideration.
Miss, which AO do you think is like the weakest from the answer I wrote, like the one that lacks?
Um, I'm going to say that maybe we can do better on all aspects. Okay.
Mhm.
Just to give us some kind of room for improvement. I think with the concept with AO1, we can focus on the tragic ending, like the death
All right.
of his, right? His death, his downfall. That is something that's quite common in all of Shakespeare's tragedies. Again, you can make a connection to his other literary works, that all of his tragedies have a tragic ending. There's always a death of said main character, main antagonist, main protagonist, or something. And that's why I think that for AO1, we can focus on, because it's a tragedy at the end of the day, we can focus on the tragic ending as well. And that is something that you can discuss either as a point, as a paragraph yourself, and say that that Act 1 and Act 2 kind of set the tone for the downfall. You can have one whole paragraph over there, or you can choose to add it to your conclusion paragraph.
All right.
Uh, Good evening, Miss. Do I have classes now or do I have classes on Sunday?
Hi, Vera. Can you just give us 5 minutes and we're just about to finish? I hope that's okay.
Sure, Miss.
Yeah, so you can leave and join back in 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem, Miss.
Okay, so Natara, let's look at AO2. Analyze ways in which the meanings are shaped and check close attention to authorial methods. So because you said that AO2 is something that you are struggling with, I feel like that AO2 might be your weakest point. I think with specific connection to the authorial methods is where you might be lacking. I don't think there's a lack of understanding in the meaning of the text, but more with maybe including the authorial methods. So we'll write that down here. And then for AO3, we can say, because you were not sure what your personal and argued response was supposed to be, I think we can categorize that as maybe something that we can focus on for the next time, so that you can give more of a personal touch to whatever response or whatever essay you are writing. So do you have any questions for me today, or do you think we can end the session here and we can continue this tomorrow?
Yes, Miss, that's all.
Yeah.
We're doing poetry tomorrow, right?
Yes, I'm going to try my
Miss,
best to find the questions for us. Go ahead.
yes, please, Miss. And also, could we like focus, because I don't know if there's gonna be enough time to cover all the poems, right? could we just focus on like, if we can do like, most of the poems, that's also good, but like how each poem relates to the question, like the
How about
theme
we
of
do,
place.
yeah, how about we do this? Send me the question that we're talking about, okay? Theme of place or whatever theme or character you're
It,
focusing on. Send that to me in the WhatsApp chat, and then send me the specific poems you're struggling with so that we can start off with those ones. And then when we get closer, we can address the rest of the remaining poems. What do you think?
sure, miss, but I don't really have any poetry questions like past papers or anything.
Okay, so what are you focusing on? Because you said theme of place. Is that something that
Yeah,
you're...
I missed the entire unit too. It's about a place, places in literary texts.
Yeah,
Well, so it's both The Great Gatsby and poetry. It's all about place,
yeah,
and
that's
I
the
have
title of
trouble.
the page. I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So
so let's
I
just
don't
do this. Let's just
understand.
go one by one. Is there any Seamus Heaney poem that you really struggle with, or do you want us to make time for all of them?
If we can make time for all of them, that's great. But there's like Bog Queen, Punishment. Those two I have a bit of trouble connecting to place. Also, we haven't really finished all of the poems in school either. There's also midterm break.
When is your midterm break?
No, it's the poem in the
Oh, okay, okay. I thought you have a
yeah.
midterm break. All right.
Oh, we do 22nd.
Okay. Okay, why
And
don't you make a list of the specific poems you want us to target so that we can cater to those first, and then we can make it through
sure,
the rest of
miss.
the anthology. So that will give us
All
something
right.
to focus on, something to begin with. And then
Mhm.
as we make our way down that list that you have catered, we can see what other poems are remaining and we can go across those too.
Sure, miss. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I'll see you tomorrow, same time.
See you, miss. All right, miss.
See
Thank
you.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Miss, have a good day.
You too.
Bye, miss.
Bye.